So thank you everyone that's come to join us. That's absolutely brilliant. We're very, very happy to have you all with us this afternoon. Guessing that everyone is in a similar situation to the Freestack team. We're all in lockdown. We're all working from home, which is, I think a lot of people have thought that working from home is like a dream come true until suddenly we all have to work from home, and then suddenly we realize it's not all it's cracked up to be. But hopefully we can share some interesting insights with everyone over the next, I guess, 45 minutes or so. Try and give you some information that is usable. That's the key thing. So towards the end of the presentation, once we've set the scene, there'll be some hopefully some really usable insights that you guys can take away from this presentation. So without further ado, I am going to introduce us. So the team that's going to be presenting today is a number of my colleagues at Freestack. So as I said earlier, my name is Simon. I'm the CEO, co-founder at Freestack. We're also joined on the line by Laura Funk, who is our community manager. So she looks after the content creator community that we have as a element of the Freestack offering. Laura is actually based in Chicago. So poor old Laura is just starting her day and has been thrown in at the deep end, whereas the rest of us have all had time to warm up and get a few coffees in us. But very excited to have Laura on this webinar. And then Gab and Amy, who both work very closely with clients, and they're obviously the people that have got the most experience in helping to run campaigns, helping to get the most out of campaigns, and they'll also be sharing some insights into what we've been learning about influencers and what they're doing in this kind of current climate. So this is us. Just in terms of a quick introduction, this is really the reason that we wanted to sort of start launching webinars and producing content is, we've been working in this sector for 7 years, so in the run, cycle and outdoor sector. And we've been researching and surveying that sector as much as we possibly can for those 7 years. And, with the current coronavirus situation, we're using all of our resources to keep abreast of everything that's happening, because obviously we need to understand what's happening within the market. And as part of that, and you'll see this later on in the presentation, we've carried out some surveys, both with our community of content creators, and also we've been looking at what the brands have been doing online. So a bit of desk research and trying to understand what everyone's doing. So we've been running surveys with our community and also hosting a number of online events. In fact, we actually have an online event with our community at 5 o'clock UK time, so pretty much straight after this. So Laura has very little time to catch her breath before she's into the next thing. And we've been talking a lot about tactics with our clients, and we've been sort of trying to understand how they can mitigate what's happening as far as the coronavirus is concerned in the endurance sports and outdoor space. So those are some of the things that we want to share with you today, and ultimately, illustrate how we can potentially help brands, marketeers, people that are involved in trying to talk to clients. So that's sort of the introduction. Over the next 45 minutes, we are aiming to give you an overview of what's happening in the market in general. We're going to be looking at some of the brands that we think are communicating in a really creative way, and Gab will be kind of taking us through that. We'll then be looking into the research that we've been doing, the surveys that we've been doing with the influencers in the community, which is Laura, should be taking us through that. And then Amy is going to be looking at some examples of how content creators are doing a really good job of engaging with their audiences in these very difficult times. And then you'll all be pleased to know that you get to hear from me again at the end, talking a little bit about how Freestack can potentially help you if you're in a position of trying to communicate with your audience through content creators and influencers and ambassadors. So I am at this point going to hand over to Gab. There may be a little bit of him having to, or anyone else that's presenting having to ask me to click on from one slide to the next, because I apparently have control. But having said all of that, I'll hand over now to Gab if you want to take it away as far as market research is concerned.
Absolutely, thanks, Simon. Well, I might prompt you for the next slide, in keeping with your preface there. But yeah, as Simon mentioned, I'm really keen to talk a little bit about the state of the market, just sort of pause and have a reflection on where we're at, and also just identify some brands that we think have responded really well quite quickly, and we can take it from there. So I think the first thing I wanted to demonstrate is exactly where the market is at. Now, I'm conscious that a lot of this won't be new to a lot of the people online at the moment. I think you will be painfully aware of the state of the market. But we thought we dived into some numbers and found some quite interesting stats. And we saw that at the moment, year-on-year growth, well, initially it was forecast to be up. Global ad spend was forecast to be up 7.4% on 2019. Now that's taken a considerable hit. It's been reduced by 4%. It's been pulled back, that initial figure, but it is actually still forecast to be a growth on 2019. So it's interesting that the first initial suggestions are that while global ad spend is taking a bit of a hit, we're still moving forward, which is promising. However, China has some stats that are sort of conflicting with that a little bit, and as we know, they're a little bit ahead of the game on all fronts here, and they're actually saying that there is a decrease likely to happen, a 2.1% decrease as it currently stands on ad spend in 2019. So sort of a little bit conflicting there, and I suppose the feeling is maybe the rest of the world hasn't realized that there's going to be a decrease, and maybe those stats are going to change as we move further into this global crisis. But interestingly, Facebook is anticipating quite considerable growth on 2019 numbers, and they're actually suggesting 22% increase in ad revenue. So there's a few levers at play here. Obviously, with Facebook, a lot of marketing is being diverted from elsewhere into Facebook. Some money is being taken away from Facebook advertising for those that are freezing marketing budgets. So it's difficult to know what the inner workings here are, but I suppose, you know, the word we've introduced this slide with is turbulent, and I think that does accurately sum up the global ad spend at the moment. Things are moving in very different directions, and we're not quite clear where we're going to land, though. Probably the theme is that things are slowing down. One of the major reasons for this is obviously the avenue to sale. So a lot of major brands are obviously shutting up shop. Initially, this was optional, and now it is much less optional. Importantly, you know, countries like the UK, for example, are basically mandating that that retail is closed for the time being unless absolutely essential, and unfortunately for a lot of sports and endurance brands, probably not considered essential retail shops. So they're closing up. Companies like Patagonia are actually closing their online retail as well, which is really interesting, and that's very much a social good, I suppose, that they're doing there. But the point here is that there's limited avenue to sell at the moment, which is really difficult. And of course, if you've been paying attention at all, which I'm sure you have, every event under the sun has been cancelled: marathons, Olympics, festivals. So the market is certainly in a turbulent state. Now that sort of leads me quite nicely onto the next point, which is a sort of game that we've played internally. I don't know if you've seen, there's a wonderful website called Has It Been Cancelled? And now it's full of red, which implies that everything's cancelled. But for a while there, it was interesting to keep track. And the reality is, at the moment, we can quite clearly see that basically most of these avenues, which are opportunities for brands to talk to their customers, most of them have been removed over the last couple of weeks, and it's obviously happened quite quickly. So it's really interesting to see. We're genuinely interested and would love feedback from brands if you do want to get in touch to let us know how this has affected you, because from our perspective, it's quite difficult to see what avenues brands have to talk. Typically, the traditional avenues are taken away, which is really difficult, of course. So really interesting to see the landscape from that perspective. Now, I'm really conscious of not using words like opportunity here. This is obviously an incredibly difficult time for many, for brands, for people as individuals, and we want to be really sensitive to that. But we're also really conscious that we've got to be realistic with what the market is doing. And it has been really interesting to see the social media or the phone habits or online habits of people during the epidemic. And Facebook have released some really interesting data around, particularly around Italy during some of the peak times, or over the last month or so, that it's been particularly difficult in Italy. And they've actually found that the Facebook suite of apps, so particularly Instagram and Facebook, have increased their screen time by 70% throughout Italy. The Drum have reported that 85% of Chinese consumers are increasing their at-home usage, and in the US it's closer to 29%, but 28% are actually saying they're shopping online more. So it's really clear to see that what people sort of have suggested anecdotally, which is we're going to turn to our phones given we're at home, it's interesting to see the data starting to come through to suggest that that is indeed true. And of course, that filters through to things like engagement rate on campaigns, and obviously have got some interesting data which suggests exactly that. 22%, or there's an increase of 22% on Instagram engagements, and 76% for TikTok daily likes. So it's really interesting to see that that behavior is curbing in such a way, and the reality is the audience is not, you know, your customer base is obviously not at marathons at the moment for obvious reasons, but they are indeed at home on their phone. So just quickly to recap a few points we've touched on, the global marketing ad spend is looking to slow, though there's sort of some conflicting information there. The trend is certainly a slowdown, if not a significant reduction. And of course, brands do have fewer opportunities to talk to their audience. That's without a doubt. There are clear increases in screen time, which obviously means there's a greater audience to speak with on social media at the moment. And brands and content creators, and we'll look into some examples of this, but they've got an opportunity to respond effectively, but importantly, appropriately at the moment. And those that are doing that are able to capture that increased audience or speak to them at this time. And interestingly, we'll show a few examples, but it's certainly not brands that are like virtual brands that are able to do this. It's anyone that's got the sort of creativity or the idea to tap into this at the moment. So it's certainly not limited by who or what the brand does. So let's touch on some examples of brands that we think are doing really well. And I mean, the reality is Nike are quite good at this. They respond to most things quite well. And they've obviously got the resources to do this. What I really like about Nike's approach is it was really simple. You know, if you've ever dreamed of playing for millions around the world, now is your chance. Play inside, play for the world. It's a really simple message. It's a social good. And it's been really powerful and really widely shared. And this has tapped into the next sort of wave of it, which is the Living Room Cup. And that's literally a digital workout series where you can compete against pro Nike athletes. So sort of democratizing that side of things. And it's tied the two into one another really nicely. But it's a really simple campaign that Nike have done really elegantly. And it's been a really nice sentiment that they've left behind. And it's that social good element. And it's allowed a lot of people to engage it's quite like low entry barriers to engage in this kind of living room cup and playing inside, playing for the world. It's quite simple language. Now, Under Armour have been really quite strong responders as well, but from quite a different perspective. Also quite a social good, but they've literally gone to divert resources into manufacturing assembled face masks. And they've initially done this for, I think, 28,000 healthcare professionals at the University of Maryland, and they're planning to do up to 100,000. So it's really promising to see. Obviously, this does get shared, and this is something that people see of Under Armour, but it's a really promising response that, yes, it gets shared on social media, and a lot of their ambassadors and athletes obviously promote and talk about how proud they are of the brand. But it's a very different approach from Nike's, which is really interesting to see. Now, those two examples are very much like massive organizations with big marketing divisions and budgets. But the reality is it's certainly not only those brands that are able to respond effectively. I think 7Mesh have something like 7 employees or something. They're a small brand, modest marketing resources, but they're obviously able to produce a really elegant response as well. and the Safe Escapes is a hashtag on Instagram stories. It's really spreading the ideas that customers and athletes share their safe escape through their social channels, and it's allowing them to reach new followers. It's not viral as such, but it's got that viral spread element to it, and it's worked really nicely. And you can see there, it's just beautifully and elegantly done. And again, it promotes a similar message to the Nike one, but it's done by a brand with the fraction of the budget and resources. So it's certainly not only the Goliaths of industry that are able to respond here. Now, I really like this one from Strava, and I think there's a few brands that a lot of people think of or turn to at the moment. And one is, brands like Zwift, for example. Obviously, if anyone's following any cyclist, basically they're getting inundated with Zwift content. But Strava was a really interesting one because their main thing is tracking exercise that is outside. And so an entry barrier for them or a concern for them is whether people will decide that that's not wise. And so they've got to be really conscious that they're educating and encouraging people to do the right thing, obviously, but also making sure that the information out there is correct. So I thought this was a really simple, low-key way of them engaging with their audience, providing correct information, and overcoming what to them might be a bit of an entry barrier or a hurdle at the moment. So they got Dr. Roach, she's an epidemiologist, running coach. Her handle is Meg_runs_happy. And she just literally went through, responded to a lot of questions, the impact of exercising outside, social implications, physical. As an epidemiologist, obviously she was well placed to do that. So it was just a nice, again, simple way that Strava was able to engage in their audience, share a really strong message, and it's a bit of a social and public good, but really important to Strava to get that messaging out there. So a really different approach from Strava. And I think maybe a bit of a free stack favorite. This is one we've absolutely admired. I think the speed with which Salomon got this up and running was really incredible. They've obviously diverted their marketing team to the time to play inside hashtag, and they've done it remarkably effectively. So if anyone has a moment, I strongly encourage you to go to the Salomon Running Instagram handle, and I think there's 4 episodes up there at the moment. And do take a moment to flick through them. They're funny, they're interesting, they're inspiring, and they're really tastefully done. And it's a twist on their typical hashtag time to play campaign. So time to play inside is just a really simple twist on it. They've literally created a digital magazine, and they did it really, really, really quickly. And it's just another great creative response using a lot of the assets and athletes that they've got to create something that's a real escape for those that are obviously struggling with not being able to go outside. So I think there's 5 examples there of brands that are doing things entirely differently and really appropriately for their brand, and it's almost independent of resources. So they're all very, very different stages of where they're at as brands, and I think they've all responded in a really interesting and elegant way. So it's really promising to see. So now we're going to hand over to my colleague Laura. So Laura's conducted some research with our influencers, and she's put out some surveys. So we've got a really rich resource of information from our community of influencers and content creators. We're going to talk a little bit about what we've found and what we're starting to see as trends. So yeah, here's Laura.
Hello everyone. So yeah, I'm going to talk a bit about some data we got directly from our content creators. Last month, we conducted a 2-phase survey to our community of influencers to see how their lives have been affected from the COVID-19 crisis and kind of gather some information about how their physical activity has been affected, whether it's dropped and about their brand collaborations and how their relationships with brands have been affected, and their content production and activity on social media. So we saw a significant drop in physical activity, and this was due a lot to lockdowns and restrictions throughout different areas. In just 7 days, we saw a drop from 78 to just about 50% of our influencers who are continuing to stay active. So definitely saw that continuing to drop, and also noticed local variations in the global activity. So it kind of depended on official guidelines in different areas, and saw the drop in physical activity follow the spread of the virus a bit, and areas like North and South America continue to stay active. With the lockdowns and restrictions, so with everything going on, and continue to see an increase in event cancellations, and in just 7 days, there was about 20% increase in people reporting that their events were being canceled. And so we asked them what kind of things that brands could do to help with this loss in content, and kind of increase and inspire the influencers to create new things. And the majority, a lot of responses were to do virtual challenges, races, runs, events, and things like that. So connecting people virtually. And many responded to create more positive environment and creating positivity in one another, doing more virtual meetups on Zoom, whether that's with brands or with ambassador programs, connecting everyone and influencers, like talking and getting people together virtually. And other things included giveaways, kind of boosting morale with extra kit, or possibly Instagram takeovers. Yeah, things like that. So with the lockdowns and restrictions, influencers are finding new ways to stay active, and we asked them types of things that they were doing, and the majority, 72%, came back with home training as their favorite means to stay active. And at home, as far as what they're using to stay active, 52% were using YouTube, and others use treadmills, stationary bikes, and virtual apps to keep themselves motivated. And these are just a few examples from our influencers. We had some posting about providing some advice if their races have been canceled or postponed. One of our influencers put out just a long video, a brief video, just helping them out with that and providing some advice. Others were doing more detailed at-home workouts, providing specific training plans and images, videos. And Rhea down at the bottom she was doing the burpee challenge. So you can see her there doing her 100 burpee challenge per day. And others were getting really creative with their content, which we really like seeing. Here at the left, she's doing workouts carrying a rucksack. So doing push-ups, squats, sit-ups, and kind of adding a little variety to his workouts there. The second one, doing a vertical climb run throughout his home, which was really unique. And then there at the right, doing challenges with your dog. So she would film and take photos of herself working out with her dog, and then would also feature other people that were doing it as well throughout her stories. We also noticed there was a drop in content creation, but it was turning towards becoming more meaningful instead. So there was a drop, but we saw the posts that were coming out to promote more positivity. 62% are posting less content, mostly because of these postponed adventures or canceled events. We found that 80% are inspiring audiences through positivity and motivational messages. And this also includes strong communication with friends and family and kind of boosting morale in that way. And these are some examples that we noticed that were really inspiring, just promoting, you know, love and connection between one another. And on the right, being really vulnerable and open about your situation, about their situation, and you know, sharing their own personal daily routines of how they stay active and stay mentally healthy and things like that. And we saw that influencers' brand collaborations were starting to be affected as well. 21%, there was a 21% increase in influencers noticing fewer opportunities. And they also noticed that brands were doing a lot of great things as well. ASICS is an example presented from the community that they launched a social media initiative, United Yet United, to help, you know, fight the isolation and bring all the influencers together more. Create a sense of community. Keen sent 100,000 pairs of shoes to people on the front lines and families who are in need. So some really cool initiatives by brands. And now we're gonna touch on some things that we noticed they're doing right, and I'm gonna pass it on to Amy.
Hello. So essentially we across the team, we did a bit of a deep dive into what was going across content creators, Instagram accounts, and even across the network who were above and beyond our network. So more celebrities in terms of adventurous celebrities and stuff. So if we start looking into onto the next slide. So what we actually noticed was that regarding all our verticals that we specialize in, so cycling, running, and outdoors, outdoors obviously is the most adventurous and most outside the box thinkers when it comes to, you know, planning and you know, the world's their oyster. They can kind of have such a breadth of imagination and do whatever they want and plan for the next adventure, whether it be going up Everest or, you know, walking the length of the Nile. And then we get cycling and running, which is just as exciting and adventurous, but, you know, when it comes to the cyclist and the runner, they have such easy access on their front doorstep. Therefore, you know, they don't have to think outside the box when it comes to planning their challenges. So we actually this sort of resonated with the themes that we were seeing throughout the content produced of all our network of content creators. You know, cyclists and runners, you know, they're not lacking imagination, but they are limited within their kind of confines of what they can create. And outdoors, you know, as we were saying, the world's their oyster. So if we go on to the next slide, we'll start to see a couple of examples. Obviously, these are the main categories that we found in terms of what content creators were producing. So product testing, you know, indoor exercise drills, mobility to keep fit for when you're able to go out eventually, fitness challenges, which obviously were trending across all social spheres, giveaways and competitions, you know, live IGTV workouts. With running, it was very similar sort of content being produced. So favorite moments from 2019, I'm sure we've all seen them throughout our feed, you know, nutrition talks, home workout, fitness again, races, competitions, people running around their garden, you know, virtual tech products, as Gab discussed earlier, brand sponsorships, obviously, which is a big one at the moment because product in hand and so many eyeballs on social media is really vital. And out in the outdoors, you know, we saw educational tutorials, how to plan for your next adventure, creative art projects, which we will touch on, which was actually Freestack's, one of Freestack's favorite examples, photography competitions, again, looking back at your most memorable adventures, and yeah, like this is quite a fun one as well, taking the outdoors inside to your home. So yeah, overall, essentially simple concepts work well. There's quite far and few between amazing examples, which, you know, are hugely creative, and you know, we'll touch on them in a bit if we go on to the next slide. So yeah, some examples. So this is one of our influencers who is actually working on a couple of our campaigns at the moment, and she's a PT already, so she's got great capabilities to actually do a lot of product testing. So obviously clients love that. You know, what I was saying earlier on was, you know, you can get products straight into the hands of content creators, and as Gab was discussing, you know, social media usage is up, there's more eyeballs on screens, and this is great because more people are sitting at home with time on their hands. So why not utilize this time to research what the product or technology you want to use now to increase your performance later down the line when marathons are coming out again in September, October. Go on to the next slide. Yeah, so virtual events, run clubs and races. Again, we've seen them all. Every time I go onto Instagram, it will be so-and-so's gone live with a workout or a run club or a race. And this is great for the countries which have the ability to actually still kind of go out in the local area, but not so great for the countries which are on complete lockdown and don't have that ability to do a 1 hour exercise. However, you know, this is for a UK sort of viewpoint, these are amazing. It's great for brands to still be able to connect with their audiences, and it's great for that community and still engage people while we're all stuck inside. You know, there's a reason why, you know, runners join run clubs. It's great to feel like you have a family, so there's no point in sort of getting rid of that when we're all in isolation. If you go on to the next slide. So yes, as we were discussing as well, which Laura touched on, a couple of our influencers, or quite a few of them actually, are all doing these trending challenges, whether it be like a burpee competition or a plank competition. You know, home workouts are the norm. Every day you'll probably see someone online on your Instagram doing a live workout, or scroll through a post of their series of workouts. And again, this is a great way just to keep your audience motivated and engaged. So this is quite a fun one. Again, I guess it's touching on the adventurer and the outdoors enthusiast. So we are having to redefine the rules now. You know, we're taking the outside inside. So some content creators are using their home furniture and becoming more innovative by using things inside the house to train with, whether it be climbing around your table, which this couple seem to be doing. But, you know, it's just a way to make sure that we're keeping on top of our game for when we can get back to the real outdoors. This is a great example from brand collaboration with Cotswolds and Jamie is Running. So I think this is a really nice one because obviously it touches upon integrating your audience really into the content, and you're making it not exclusive, you're making it inclusive. So whoever has a tent at home, you know, I think Cotswolds Outdoor have done really well here because they realize their primary audience are a little bit older, a little bit mature, and most of them are going to be stuck at home with families. So I just think this is such a nice concept to get your family involved. You know, why not include everyone in the household? And it just shows that we can all be imaginative and play imagination games with our family and our kids. So yeah, it's a great example. And again, whilst we're sitting at home, as from an adventurer outdoors perspective, why not utilize the time to plan for our future adventures? You know, we have so much at our disposal right now in terms of research. So this guy has basically done a couple of short clips and documentaries on how to climb the Matterhorn, and I think that's really interesting in terms of, again, there's so many users at home who want to be engaged and want to, you know, have so much time to invest in actually researching and planning for later down the line. So yeah, let's maximize that. Giveaways and competitions, these are easy wins. It's all about the low-hanging fruit at this point, isn't it? So getting products again straight into the hands of users. How can we, you know, it's our responsibility to keep them happy and keep them motivated, because at this moment in time, it's actually quite a negative connotations in the news every day. You know, it's a bit of a depressing position to be stuck inside. So what I really liked about a couple of these examples were the competitions were for things to win, to actually best make use of your time whilst you're stuck at home. So upskilling you in terms of photography competitions, send in your best picture and you will win a photography competition or an art class. And I just feel like that's a really good way to engage and spread joy in the community and within your audiences. And what we have noticed quite a lot actually is content creators who are usually kind of pushing out their content on Instagram or blogs have actually now sort of looked at different avenues to sort of engage their audiences. So they're going down this podcast route, which is becoming a bit of a norm now. And I think this is really vital because, you know, audiences are going to that trusted source. And, you know, at the moment, the news is being very repetitive. No one really understands. There's mixed messages. There's a lot of confusion. And actually, if you can add a personal element to it, it's great because you're going to have so many more audiences going to you for that personal touch. And, you know, you can empathize with them from a situational point of view of, you know, you understand that they're climbers and, you know, what this means for climbers, what this means for runners right now. So, yeah, I think this is a really, really important aspect. And also it's such a personal way of getting into people's ears through audio. Yes, obviously, again, a really vital point to make, which is content creators are trying to, as much as they can, they're really using their platforms and their voices and their reach to keep the community safe and sort of reinstate the messages that the government restrictions and the government limitations and, you know, these limitations that are put in place for very good reason to save people's lives, you know, they're trying to promote that. And there's been so much content around which, you know, is so valuable to remind people, you know, don't be selfish, play the game, we'll all get through this together. You know, it's all about solidarity right now. So yeah. So yes, these are a couple of pieces of content that I mentioned earlier, which the Freestack team do think is exceptional content. But as I mentioned, it's 1 in a million. It's a very specific mindset to sort of build these sorts of ideas. So yes, so this is Rory Southworth, who is on our platform. You might have seen this in The Guardian as well, actually. He is a very, very creative young lad who loves mountaineering and freshwater swimming. And there's a series of photographs that he's done in which he is living in his household and challenging himself to basically live in his household like he's climbing to Everest Base Camp. So every day he'll do the amount of steps that he would if he was climbing Everest Base Camp and camp in his front room and wear all the equipment. And, you know, there's in every picture, he's got a bit of an amusing edge to it, which is really nice touch of his girlfriend being very non-bemused in most pictures, which if you have time, just, you know, Google him, Rory Southworth. He is a really, really nice sort of set of images, and it really tells a story. And I think, you know, it just shows how whilst in isolation, you know, your passions are still endless. However limited you feel, there are no boundaries for the creative mind. So yeah, thinking outside the box will be amazing if people have the opportunity to do so and allow themselves. Yes, another piece of content that we all absolutely loved, which I'm sure everyone listening probably saw as well, which is Philip Clean. So he's obviously got a real talent in stop-start animation, and he must come from some form of artistic background. So, you know, to convey this story of his day out skiing using loads of household objects, for instance, using the white sheets on his bed for a mountain slope, and it's just very, very brilliant and genius piece of content. But you know, I think it was in partnership with GoPro, and someone like this doesn't need a really strict brief or parameters to sort of create something. I think when you're an artist and you think in a creative way, it's almost, you're unstoppable with what you can kind of come up with. So yes, just to summarize, you know, let's maximize what is available to us now. I guess even though we're all, you know, confined to the four walls of our house, our houses, you know, it's not actually confining us in terms of imagination and where we can take our creativity. Content creators are very hungry. You know, there's so much opportunity out there because people want to create, people want to be active and want to be engaging with their audiences. So I think, you know, we really should like maximize this. There's so much to achieve with homegrown content, and you know, as we mentioned earlier, there's so many other elements of promotion and advertising which are put on hold right now. And you know, what best way to go out there and actually engage with our audiences by using the same people who they empathize with and they resonate with in their home. You know, as we discussed with the example just then, briefs and guidelines do help on the usual case, but I guess it is a case by case basis because, you know, there are a few exceptions, but, you know, they are far and few between. You know, it is a priority for us. It's our main responsibility to make sure everyone is safe in our community and all our audiences are playing it safe. And, you know, I'm not teaching you how to suck eggs, but, you know, that message of safety and, you know, saving lives comes first. So it's always best to, you know, think about that. And, you know, audiences are desperate to be entertained and engaged. I'm sure people are getting so fed up with the same Netflix suggestions coming up on their TV, you know, so all avenues of content creation are really important and vital right now to just keep those audiences engaged and, you know, spreading joy where you can. And yeah, don't lose your voice at this time. I think it's quite a poignant time for people to speak out and make a position and, you know, encourage your audiences and motivate your audiences to keep fit, really, because obviously that's our bread and butter. So yes, I think I'm moving on to Simon now.
Cool. So we're kind of wrapping up. I mean, personally, I want to say a big thanks to Gab and Laura and Amy for that. I thought it was super useful, really interesting stuff that they've managed to pull together. I guess if we were to conclude all of this into one slide, it would be that some brands are doing a great job, some brands are doing an okay job, quite a lot of brands are doing absolutely nothing, honestly. The brands that are doing well seem to be able to work with content creators or generate their own content that is really engaging. They've changed their tack slightly. They're probably doing much less in terms of kind of what you would call traditional advertising content, and they're much more into how they can kind of, you know, engage with their customers during this difficult time. Because I guess most brands know, or at least are optimistic that this will pass. You know, people are going to get back outside. I mean, we're certainly seeing from the content creators that we have in the community that there is there's a bottled up frustration about not being able to do what we love, whether that's running, cycling, or getting outdoors and adventuring. And so that is going to be reflected in the kind of, you know, overall population. And I think once we're past this, excuse me, there's going to be a kind of a flood of people desperate to get back outside, and the brands that have been communicating consistently through this period are the ones ultimately that I think are going to win. One of the things that we've been seeing is that whilst influencer content creator activity has been reduced overall, the stuff that is being produced is still engaging, it's really creative. I mean, engagement rates on several platforms are up, and as we've just seen from the slides that Amy just took us through, some people are producing exceptional content. I mean, really, really great stuff, creative stuff that is setting the bar pretty high. And that's super exciting, especially in a time when so many other channels are not available because of you know, physical distancing and the lockdown situation. So I would say that is the kind of conclusion, the wrap up of all of this. I mean, it would be remiss of me to not say that we are still, you know, super keen to work with brands that have a requirement for either managing existing ambassadors or influencers or content creators. That's something we can help with using the Freestack platform as a tool. if you're in a situation where you're looking for content or you're looking for people to be talking about your brand, then we can help you to find influencers. And for brands that have ambassador programs that potentially at this time are struggling to sort of manage those programs effectively, again, we can definitely help with that. So because we appreciate that so many budgets are under pressure, we are offering 50% off anyone that wants to use Freestack either as an agency or the platform for the first 3 months. And as usual, you're only committing to a month at a time. So if you want to give it a go, then get in touch. You can drop us a line with any questions that you have, or in fact, if you're interested, just get in touch and we can hook you up and get something started. But in the meantime, it just falls to me to say thank you again to everyone that's joined us. We've really enjoyed having the opportunity to talk about this. The webinar recording is going to be available, so if anyone wants to share that with colleagues, you can definitely do that. We'll send a link around. Thanks to Gab and Amy and Laura for putting together these slides and giving a really solid presentation. And look, stay safe, everyone. It's a challenging time, and we hope that everyone gets through this unscathed. We look forward to a return to doing all the activities that we love. So thank you all very much indeed, and hope you have a great rest of the week.